Welcome to Lesson 4.3, Part 2 notes, writing equations in standard form. Our past targets, we wrote equations of lines in point-slope form. We wrote equations of lines in slope-intercept form. And today we're going to write equations and lines in standard form. And in the future, we will use lines to fit on a scatter plot to make and evaluate predictions. Okay, so that's the future target for this. When we did standard form before, we kind of gave you standard form that was already done for us. So we really didn't talk that much about the 3 rules that our standard form has to have. That's why we put this little box on here for your notes. The standard form of a linear equation is ax plus by equals c. C is always our constant, that number by itself. But here are the rules that we have to have. So a has to be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so it has to be a positive number or 0. It's not there. It cannot be a negative number here. A and B are not both 0. So we have to have either an x term or a y term. If those both dropped out, that would mean we no longer have a line because we just have a number equal to a number. There's no nothing changing. There's no term that can change as we do our line, as we plot our points. And then the last one is A, B, and C are integers. And we have to remember what integers are. Integers are numbers like -3, -2, 0 is an integer, 1 is an integer, but anything that is in between those type of numbers, like fractions, are not allowed. So we have to get rid of them, and we'll practice those in the notes today. So those 3 things have to happen for us to have a proper standard form equation. So let's look at example 1a, and it says write each equation in standard form. Well, this one's already given to us in point slope form, or, if you recognize that. So the first thing we need to do, because we want to get our x and our y terms on the left side of the equal sign, and then our numbers need to go to the right. So obviously this x has got to move over here, but I can't move it until I distribute the -3 from the slope through to my x plus 5. So I get y minus 4 equals -3x minus 15. Do not forget to distribute that -3 to the second term in that binomial. So now I have all of my parentheses gone, so I can move my x term. Remember, whenever we move a term, we add or subtract it from that side. So plus 3x. So I add 3x because that now goes to 0. So I get 3x plus y, that's a positive y, minus 4 still on the left side of my equation, or of my equal sign, and then I have equals -15. Well, I still have one thing that's in the wrong place. My x and my y are right, they're right here, but my -4 is in the wrong place. Any kind of constant that's just a number needs to go over here. So again, how do we move a term? We're going to add it. So I'm going to add 4. And again, some of you can do this in one step, but if you can't, take care of one term at a time and simplify. That's preferred. So I'm going to write this over here. So I get 3x plus y equals -11. And just on this one, I'm going to check, does it have an a greater than 0? Yes, it's got an a greater than 0. Then here, a and b are not both 0. Well, they're both here, so neither one of them is 0. And then a, b, and c are integers. Absolutely, this is a 3, this is a 1, and this is a -11 is an integer. So we're good. We're done in standard form for 1a. So now let's look at b. 1b. This is in slope-intercept form, but that's not what we wanted in. We wanted in standard form. So again, I need to get my x term on the other side. So I go -2x, subtract 2x from both sides because I need to move that term. This becomes 0. So we get -2x plus y equals -10. So I look and I say, well, my x term's over here, my y term's over here, and I have a number over here, so I'm done. But I need to check and see if it's in standard form. So a is greater than or equal to 0. My a value is not greater than or equal to 0, but there's an easy fix. I don't need to multiply by any other number per se or a big value. I could, but I just need to get rid of that negative. So a negative times a negative is going to give me a positive. So if I multiply the whole thing by -1, and we've done this before, remember, as long as you do it to the entire equation, you can do anything to the entire equation. So I'd like to multiply by -1 because that's going to take care of that -2 in the front. So now instead of -2, I'm going to get a +2. Notice that this -1 is being distributed to everything. So I get 2x minus y. It didn't say anything about the b term being bigger than 0, just the a has to be bigger than 0, equals, and this now becomes a +10. So now I'm informed. So my a is bigger than 0, these are not both 0, and a, b, and c are now all integers, but the a had to be positive. So now you have 2 to try for a and b, and you have 2 examples right above to look at as you do those. After you do those, you're going to go down to example 2a, and again, we're writing in standard form, but instead of it already being done for us, we actually have to put it in a form to switch it to standard form. We don't go straight to standard form at all. There's not a formula for that. So we're going to use point slope form. Why? Because I'm given a point and a slope. So I'm going to go y plus 3, because it's minus a -3, equals -2/3, and then x minus 6. Our first step is to multiply my -2/3 through my parentheses through my binomial. I'm going to distribute it, so I get y plus 3 equals -2/3 x, and plus, and that would be -2 times -6 gives me +12 divided by 3, so it's +4. Now I'm back to the example that looked like the very first one, that 1a. So I need to move my x term, and then I'm going to have to move this 3 over here. So both of those things need to happen. I'm going to pick another color here. So we'll add 2/3 x and add 2/3 x. This goes to 0. So I get 2/3 x plus y plus 3 equals 4. Now this 3 needs to move because it's on the wrong side according to my standard form. So I'm going to subtract 3, subtract 3. So that goes to 0. So I get 2/3 x plus y equals 1. But are we done? Remember, going back to my rules, the very first dot says a has to be greater than or equal to 0. Well, it's 2/3 that is. Then the second one says a and b are not both zeros. Well, they're not both zeros because we have an a and a b. And then it says a, b, and c are integers. So 2/3 is not an integer. So I need to make it into an integer. And again, I can multiply the whole thing by a number to help me out. And we have talked about this before. If we don't like fractions, you multiply through by the denominator. So I'm going to multiply everything by, let's see here, 3. So this will get multiplied by 3, this will get multiplied by 3, and this will get multiplied by 3. So 3 times 2/3, the whole reason I multiply by 3 is so that they will cancel here. So 3 times 2/3 is 2. So I get 2x. And then 3 times y gives me 3y. And then 3 times 1 gives me 3. So now it's in standard form because I don't have any fractions. Everything is, the a is greater than 0, and neither one of, or not both of these are 0. In fact, I have a 2 and a 3 for them. Okay, so now you have a chance to try here. So again, you have a nice example here that I've walked you through every step. If you need to, rewind to figure out how come this is 2. I've said it 3 times. 3 times 2/3 is 2. The 3's cancel out. If you need to, put it in your calculator to convince yourself, or think about how we multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 divided by 3 is 2. That's how we get that 2 there. So now you have a you try. On the back of your notes, we have one more example that I'm going to walk you through, and the rest is on you. So this time, they didn't even give me the slope, but I have 2 points, and you should start being at that point where whenever I'm given 2 points, I know at the very least I can find the slope of those lines. So, or of that line. So 4 minus 1 over -2 minus a -4. Make sure you fill in form correctly. So that will become a 2 plus 4. And I get the answer 3 over 2. So it's positive. And then now I'm just going to plug this in using one of my points. It doesn't matter which point you choose. We've done this many times. I'm going to pick the first one just because it's got smaller numbers to me, -4 and 1. So I get y minus 1 equals 3/2 times the quantity x plus 4. And then I'm going to multiply through. So I get y minus 1 equals 3/2 x plus 6. So 3 times 4 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. And now my x term is in the wrong place, and so is this -1. I'm going to take the opportunity to do it at the same time to show you that you can, but if you need to do each step, you certainly may. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides, but I'm also going to subtract 3/2 x from both sides. This is mostly to save space right now on our notes. Okay. So these cancel and these cancel. So now everything's in the right place. I just need to make sure that it will be in standard form. So on the left here I have -3/2 x plus, y equals, and I have 6 plus 1 over here, so that's 7. The only thing that's making this not be in standard form right now is this -3/2. For one thing, it's not bigger than 0, bigger than or equal to 0, and it's not an integer. So I can actually take care of both of those things with one move. So I'm going to multiply by 2 because I know to get rid of the fraction I need to multiply by a 2, and then to get rid of the negative I need to multiply by a negative. So to take care of them together, I just multiply the whole thing by -2, which means I'm going to multiply 2 to this term, and to this term. So the entire thing. Don't do it just one side because your equation will no longer be balanced. So this will now become 3. So I get 3x and then minus 2y because -2 times y gives me minus 2y equals -14. And then now this is in standard form. 3 is an integer. It is bigger than or equal to 0. And a and b are both not 0. I have a number for each of those. So now you have a you try over here. There is a challenge. If you do the challenge piece and it leads you through, so you find your slope first, then point slope form, then slope intercept form, then standard form, and you can work through them all. This is just a hint of what you will have to do on the test, to help you. If you do this one, you will get some bonus points, but it must be done when you walk into class. And then you have review at the bottom. So you're writing equation. Notice again, this is a straight up and down line. This is a horizontal line, vertical. You should have an x equals and a y equals for each of those, and it should be pretty quick. C is an example of what you will see on at the EOC, just to give you some practice with that. And then D, write an equation in slope intercept form of the function given below. So we're doing the same thing. It's just your points are 1, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 4, 0. It looks like this in your box in the function, so I want to see if you can do that as well. You don't have to graph it. You're just writing the equation. All right, have a good weekend.